own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, René Barnett.
Hey everyone, how are you? Welcome to Night Vision once again. If this is your first time, welcome. Hope you'll come back again. Got a great show planned for tonight. Got author Gretchen Cornwall with me tonight. Really excited because we're going to be talking about, among other things, Mary Magdalene and her huge presence in the southern part of France and why that is. And among other things about our history, our past, our ancestry. But I wanted to share something with everyone that may not know, but we are opening a center in southern France. It's called La Confluence, or the Confluence in English. And what it is it's a research and tour center. So we're set up to receive guests, come by for a cup of coffee or a croissant, and sit down and talk with us. We're going to be opening, I hope, we're aiming for Easter, because Easter is big in France, and it is also when all the tourists start arriving. So we hope to be able to do that. The whole center won't be finished, but the ground portion for the public should be well done by then, and we'll be able to receive visitors. And the name Confluence is for two reasons. The house actually sits at the merging or the confluence of two rivers, the River Salz and the River Aude. And there's a theory or a legend that the confluence of two rivers is an extremely powerful place to be. And I've heard people say that if you go there and you meditate or you sleep, that you will have wild visions and dreams, very vivid. And so I'm hoping that's true. I'm going to try it out. But anyway, the other thing is, because it's a confluence of ideas and of different people, we're trying to include as much and as many people as we can. We're having classes and all kinds of things. We're giving French classes, but we're also going to be having classes in sacred geometry, yoga, Tai Chi, art, jewelry making. I mean, we're just going to be really, really busy there, and hope to have lots of interesting things that people see. We've got some great people already scheduled to come over and speak with us. My good friend, Marlena Hullum, who is a historian and a teacher and an artist, is going to do a presentation on her wonderful stained glass installation, which sits in a museum in America now. But it was inspired by the quilts made by African slaves, where they would actually sew in hidden messages for those that were in the know. It was part of the Underground Railroad, and people could read these secret messages. And then on the other hand, Jill Bladen, who is, she's my right hand, if nothing. And she is a wonderful artist. She's also a lawyer and an interior designer, thank God, because she's really helping me out a lot. But she is going to also give a presentation on hidden messages in paintings, like in medieval paintings and Renaissance paintings. A lot of the times, royal families or aristocratic families would commission these paintings, and sometimes I think they requested those messages to be put in. Other times, I believe the artist inserted messages on his or her own, mostly his, because they didn't pay much attention to women artists at that time. But anyhow, we're going to be having all kinds of wonderful things going on there, and I hope you'll manage to get by there sometime. But at the very least, I hope you'll come over to Facebook and check us out. It's called La Confluence, and it will you'll recognize. I think there might be a couple of other Facebook pages that have a similar name, but you will recognize ours because there's an even-handed Templar-looking cross with a pink rose in the middle of it as our icon. So just look for that cross with the rose in it, and that will be us. So I hope you make it by, or at least make it to the Facebook page, and let us know what you think. And if you are going to be able to come over, or if you're already local there, give us some ideas on what you'd like to see us do there at the center. We're open. We're open to lots of different things. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on my guest. She's a friend, she's a researcher, and she's an author, and she is a lover of Mary Magdalene, as so many of us are. And so I thought I would ask Gretchen to come because she is so much into the Magdalene research. And I'm also twisting her arm to come on over to the center and give us some presentations on Mary Magdalene and others, because she's also very much a Knights Templar researcher, among other things. And also, hopefully, we will get together a tour for the fall, the early autumn, I should say. My friends in Europe and the UK make fun of me for saying the fall. They say, "What do? You actually tip over?" I said, no, that's what we call it. But it is the autumn. So it's probably going to be, I'm hoping for September, Gretchen. I don't know if that's feasible, but at least by, early-ish October. When the weather's really nice there still, it's cooling down a bit because July and August are just terrible.
It's untenable in July and August, and that's why France shuts its doors in August and goes on holiday.
Yep.
So they're smart. They know what to do.
Everybody has water.
Yes, September, October, would be delightful. And I know we haven't firmed any dates up yet, but you don't have to twist my arm too hard.
Good.
I'll figure out a way. I'll figure out a way to make that happen.
Yeah. And I hope you can spend a little time so that we can set up some other things for you to do, some presentations and classes and things, because I think that would be really great. And especially when the tours start coming through, there'll be a lot of people interested to hear more about the area and about Mary Magdalene in particular.
Yes.
I think most of the people that come there have a Mary Magdalene idea in mind when they come there, especially women. I'll say that. Women are really drawn to Mary Magdalene. And that's one thing I wanted to speak with you about, because it seems, of course, she was derided for so long, being a prostitute and all this. And, finally the church had to come out and admit that just wasn't true.
Well, that's just the Western Church. She's actually not a prostitute in the Eastern Church. That was either purposeful or a scholarly mistake done by, a pope that was corrected in 1969. But the damage was corrected in 69, but the damage was done, and of course, once the Reformation movements started hitting in 1500s with Martin Luther, the church started fracturing, and in the West, she's written as a prostitute. But that was definitely a case of mistaken identity, if not character assassination. And she suffers from a long line of character assassination in the Western Church. It's changed. There were 35,000 different Christian sects in the world when I wrote my first book, which is behind me. Now there are 45,000 different Christian sects in the world. Really? So I can't even begin to tell you what the differences are between all of them. There are probably about 6 main pillars, if you will, of differences from Eastern Orthodox some lovely legends regarding Mary Magdalene within their umbrella. And of course, in the West, you have different branches from as well, Lutheran, etc. I won't go into that. That might be a waste of our time. But by 1969, when you have all these fractured sects, denominations, there was no way that was going to go back. So she's continually reported as being a prostitute. And unfortunately, in the film series Chosen, which has been wildly popular, beautiful production values, great cast, remarkable, so well received, by many Christians. I'll pause for a moment. René, are you still here?
I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm frozen, I guess, and you're frozen to me. So.
Oh, really? Oh, I look like I'm still moving.
Apologies, everyone, for the technical difficulties. We'll just carry on.
Would you like me to continue?
Oh, please.
What I was going to say is, unfortunately, with the popularity of The Chosen, it's just ramming it home that she was a prostitute, and it's wrong. And as a matter of accuracy, but as a matter of faith, I'm not here to ruin anybody's faith. But the message that she was married was a woman of potential wealth, and also of the Davidic line. Princess herself, a royalty herself, which is why she was actually married to Jesus as the Davidic king in exile. It was a royal marriage and a royal lineage. So to get rid of, it was necessary to get rid of her, get rid of the descendants, because they posed a political and spiritual problem for the male disciples who wanted to create a different message. And unfortunately, she lost, but her information was perpetuated through royal families in Europe. Her children married into the nobility and the royal houses of France. She was exiled to Marseille. There was a Jewish enclave there already. And so she went to a place of safety there. As so many of you who follow Mary Magdalene already know, and then would eventually become the Merovingian royal house. And of course, a lot of that DNA over time came into the Charlemagne's line as well. There's so much I can't wait to share with you on a new book I've been working on with new information that has not seen the light of day in many centuries. And I feel very privileged to have been involved, and to be writing this book. I wish I could tell you today, but I can't. But what I would like to say is something more personal to myself and also personal to you, I hope. The numbers of individuals who are genetically tied to this descendancy of the Merovingians, Charlemagne, Mary Magdalene, are in their millions today. And for myself, this is a personal story, but I hope it's also a story that resonates with you, whoever you may be. But if you're familiar with quantum mechanics, there is a theory of entanglement. And very briefly, you have two particles that are treated in the same way. They're linked and then spread miles, thousands of miles apart. You tweak one, the other one responds in the same manner. And Einstein called that spooky physics. So outside of time and space, you have this very interesting physical reaction to stimulation. So what does that mean? Many years ago, I had a wild lucid dream, and I've had maybe 6 in my life. 5 have come about in one way or another, whether or not it had anything to do with me. But I found myself in a castle. I was very strong, very determined. I was a woman. I was the lady of the castle. And I was being chased by 3 men. They had breached the castle. And this was okay, I'll just say it. I knew this is going to be so weird. Bear with me. I knew that I was Vlad Dracul's first wife. Now she's only a legend, and you can't find any information on her any longer. I was shocked. I didn't even know about the situation, but she leaps off of a tower, and falls to her death below. And it's this in Transylvania, and it's called the Princess Tower, the Princess River, but it wasn't the right castle. And so it was, this lucid dream was a mix of messages and symbols that took me somewhere else. So I'm sorry this is confusing, and I'm slightly embarrassed, but what in memory from this, and I've been profoundly, challenged by this vision for a long time, because according to legend, the enemy shot an arrow into the window of this castle. She reads the message on the arrow and says, "Oh my goodness, they're coming. I'm going to be brutally murdered or taken prisoner." So she throws herself off the tower. In mine, I was very assertive. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I'll save the rest for another time. But it does involve the motif of the dragon. But fast forward to 2020, I think it was, I was watching a BBC production of Dracula, and they were filming at a castle that I recognized, and I recognized the tower, and I went, "Oh my God, there's the tower." And here we are a few weeks later, this is another 5 years, well, this is 2025, so that was 2020. So it's been many years this has unfolded, and I had my DNA testing done, and that DNA data was taken, and it was a direct match to the Hungarian kings, the Árpád dynasty, and they were amongst the founding members of the Order of the Dragon in Eastern Europe. And this was new to me as of like about a week or so ago, and it just blew me away. So everything that happened in that lucid dream has come about, much to my great surprise. Now here I am writing about the Templars, kingly lines, powerful queens, spiritual traditions, oppressed traditions. And I never expected to have found that out. Now, I don't have a paper trail, I have a DNA trail. So I don't know how that came about.
I would say DNA is better than a paper trail, I think.
Well, there is an argument to be said for that, because of you never could tell really who the father was, other than by physical appearance, perhaps, but you always know who your mother is, and that's perhaps why the Jewish tradition of why you're, so I'm blown away by this series of events that have taken place over a long period of time. It makes sense to me because of my interest level in the topic. It's strange how one knows, and this is, I guess, what I'm trying to do, is say to people who are watching, what have you felt? What dreams have you had? Now, I've had people write to me and say that they know their genealogy, and some of the people that I have, who are friends with myself, they can go all the way back to 800 something in Brittany and France. And they know exactly who they're related to.
Mhm.
Others have had dreams that they've told me about. And it's in the West, we don't really honor our ancestors in the way that Shinto in Japan does, ancestral veneration. We're uncomfortable with the term worship in the West because we're conditioned to only worship, the status quo.
Mhm.
But veneration and acknowledgement, and not arrogance. Knowing isn't arrogance, but having inspiration and aspirations, and uh, you know knowing can come in different ways, from feeling to sight, smell, dreams, whether they're daylight, whether they're deja vu, whether they're a dream state. But when you get into the world of quantum mechanics, that's mechanism, that this wild world we live in, where everything is actually outside of time and space. And through our daily lives, once in a while, it punches through, and these powerful resonances through our DNA, from our past lives, from uh, family on the other side, guides. They sometimes, those moments punch through. Now, for me, this has taken place over junctures over many years. But I knew something was there, but I didn't know intellectually until just about 2 weeks ago. And I'm driven by this subject. It helps me make sense of my life. It drives me. It's not something I can put down. And I know a lot of people who are listening right now feel the same way. And this doesn't, this cuts across all politics, all denominations, whether you count yourself as a Christian or not. And what's interesting about that too is I recently looked up the demographic. How many, what do women in the United States, how do they identify? 75% of American women identify as Christians. But when you're talking about 45,000 different denominations, what does that look like?
Right.
And I have so many readers who, across all political divides, who have embraced Mary Magdalene, regardless of how they vote, on both sides of that challenging, fence.
Yeah.
And that is incredible. She is important to so many, for so many reasons. And you and I were talking about the statistics of this DNA as well.
Mhm.
And I think you had some information on that.
Well, we were producing the film Bloodline, and as I was telling you off the air, I really don't remember if this actually made it into the film. I think it did. It was just a small part where we were on the phone with this professor at MIT, and he had written a book or several books on statistical things, like just interesting, kind of a fun book in a way. And so we put the problem to him: if there's indeed a bloodline of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, how many people are in it today? Who would be in it? And his answer was almost near everybody. And after this many years, and you know, the turning over of the DNA, and I know that you had someone to tell you something similar, but not quite as much as everyone. But it was
Yeah.
millions.
Yeah, a mathematician many years ago said that there would be approximately 35 million individuals based on 3 children if there were no accidents, sicknesses, et cetera, et cetera. But exponentially, that would grow
Yeah.
quickly. And if 1 in 4 Europeans are related to Charlemagne, now he's called the father of Europe for a reason. Now, recently, yeah,
Literally.
yeah, uh, uh, yeah. Well, it's try to be concise here. It's I recently came across another. You'll find this on YouTube if you look. But this other individual said that everybody in Europe would have been related to Charlemagne. Now I don't know how that works. That's not where my skill set is.
Well,
But it's listening. I think listening to one's heart outside of I think one must also listen to one's motivation. And I've discovered that Mary Magdalene was venerated as Cassiopeia since at least Herod of Landsberg's Garden of Delights, which was an encyclopedia for her nuns for the leadership of her monastery. Hohen, I've forgotten, but I found evidence in a illustrated frontispiece that she was being venerated as Cassiopeia. So you've got the woman enthroned, Cassiopeia, that revolves around the pole star, which is Jesus, and she's holding a mirror. And if you go back to Greece, above the Platonic mystery school archway, you had know thyself, which means get in there, dig up your dirt. What are your motivations? What makes you tick as a human being? What is the psychology that makes you work? And what are the human foibles, that we all have? And YouTube is so wonderful today. There's so many wonderful psychology portals out there, and individuals like Dr. Ramani, who has been featured many times on the History Channel, or the animated psychotherapy, like the School of Life. So how to grow up basically and become an adult instead of a woman child or a man child. And when you can do that, then you've got a basis for being very powerful spiritually and understanding what Mary Magdalene understood. And you and I were speaking about one of the Gnostic Gospels where Peter says, "Why are you hanging out with her so much? I'm kind of annoyed with you," because that culture was very strict, and women were basically, second-class citizens at best. And Jesus turns around and says, "Are you kidding? Look at her. Come on." So
and plus she did understand the more deep teachings much better than the other disciples did.
Yes.
So that's why, that was so special, or one of the reasons she was so special to him. And we also discussed how, by my thinking that he had actually chosen Mary Magdalene for those reasons to be the head of the church, but she was usurped by Peter.
Yes.
And I've got this little theory, because in the Bible, it says that Jesus said, "This is Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." And everybody thought he's saying, for one thing, because Peter means rock, and that, I'll build my church, upon Peter, the rock of the church. But I was looking at it and reading it. I remember this was years ago now, and thinking, because he was talking and he said something about this is Peter, and upon this rock I'll build my church. I think he was pointing to an actual rock, so maybe that's been misunderstood all this time. Of course,
like a sacred site.
Yeah, like
yes, yes. The sacred mountain, the sacred, which has come down to us in Freemasonry as Mount Haradam. And there have been multiple locations chosen for that in Europe, but it's also a philosophical idea. But that is a great insight. I like that.
And we were talking about the whole ancestral memory or genetic memory, and how you separate things, but they still behave in the same ways. But we see that in a physical way with people and animals. Their bodies will adapt over time to circumstances that they find themselves in, and then over time that they become that way. Maybe they're develop a longer legs, or some physical attribute that becomes the norm after time. But it harks back to the fact that they had to climb trees or whatever it was that they had to do way back in time. So if we can see it on a physical level, why couldn't it be also on a spiritual or metaphysical level, that we have these sort of knowing?
Absolutely. I think it all starts on the inside, and whether your body adapts to a need as in a population base because of stressors or whatever, or desire for something else to happen. Yes, and it's what I find interesting when you think about, and I'm sorry, this is slightly off topic, when you consider Mexico and the Day of the Dead, and this is a very Catholic society today, but it's imbued with their prior impetuses. But the Day of the Dead is amazing because they acknowledge on October 31st that the veil between the worlds is the thinnest, and you can speak to your grandfather, your grandmother, talk to the people that have crossed over, and ask for advice and say thank you to them for their choices, which resulted in you. And that's something that as Westerners, Western Europe, the United States, or
Europeans, descendants of Europeans, because in Mexico they definitely honor their ancestors and communicate with them. And the Native Americans, the whole ancestral thing is huge in Native American culture.
Yes.
But it was for some reason, and we were talking in Europe, it was a big deal what their ancestry. Somehow we kind of cut that cord when we came to the United States or to the New World. And it's sort of like we just sprouted up from here, because I really don't remember anyone ever talking about my ancestry or anybody else's, pre-Civil War. We didn't try to think back to where, well, we might have been, German, or we might have been this. It's always just our American ancestry. And it's so weird that we do that. It's like we've become disconnected. And I wonder if that might be part of our problem.
Yeah, having lived in the UK for since 2002, predominantly, I've noticed in Americans almost a feeling of orphan, and longing to go home in some way.
Right.
And that's why the relationship between the UK and the US has always been so strong, with common language. We have more in common with the UK than we do with France, because of the shared language and culture is the same. And that has always astounded me. And the amount of documentaries on the History Channel, and of course the Curse of Oak Island, which I've been privileged to have consulted on off and on since 2018. Americans want with a yearning to remember and be integrate that into their life somehow. And I think also, the royals, nobility, the educated classes, they kept track of births and marriages, and it wasn't really, and of course records get destroyed, etc. I came across a study which I've been repeating endlessly, and this study done by 20 academics or something like that. We have lost 90% of our secular documents in Europe. 90%. So we think we know a lot about our European ancestry. And I tell you, what does that 90%, if we're only operating on 10%, what did that 90% say? Exactly. And so this is where you get into arguments about the Knights Templar and these other mysteries. And for me, I like to come at it from an anthropological point of view, psychology point of view, and a human point of view, is look at how we are as people today. We haven't changed that much. So you today, other than, a strict culture, would be the same, you would be responding to your environment in the same way. That's what I'm trying to say. But there's so much we've lost. So it's, gosh, I guess what I would like to say, in light of my experience, having that lucid dream, and I only shared half of it, and with this castle in Eastern Europe and the Order of the Dragon, and I just and then the inclusion of Vlad Dracul's first wife, who is not on record anywhere. I found a reference to her once years ago, but that's been wiped clean. I can't find a reference to her anymore. But it's the wrong castle and the wrong the wrong family. But because it was important in the information I was receiving to understand that the Order of the Dragon was important, but it was Eastern. It was more in modern day Hungary and Slovakia, etc. But the Árpád dynasty. So it was a merging of symbols and information. But so to talk to your grandparents, ask for guidance, and this is where in Catholicism the saints come in. Now that's slightly different because you might not be related to them, but one of my ancestors is Saint Stephen. So that's been interesting to discover that, because he was one of the King Stephen became Saint Stephen. So ask, and it will come to you. Now, there is nothing wrong for the devoted Christians who only speak to Jesus or to Yeshua. This is part of that myriad of which denomination is right. You can't ask that anymore, not with 45,000 different Christian sects. Yeah. So go ahead and talk to him. But what we have through Mary Magdalene is go ahead and talk to her too, because she is more than likely your ancestral mother and the new Eve, who was found blameless by him who married her, and why you and I are having this conversation today. So,
it's interesting to me. Of course, the Catholic Church and others have really mainly venerated the Mother Mary, the Virgin Mary. And yes, she is very prominent in a lot of people's lives. And there have been a lot of Marian sightings that people consider to be Mother Mary, but they don't really know, who it is. Most of the time, they call her the lady or the white lady, or, when they're having these Marian apparitions. But there's something about Mary, something about Mary Magdalene that seems to really connect with people, with women today. And I wonder if it has something to do with that whole, derision of her as being a prostitute, and, now she's being redeemed. And it's almost like, because we grew up, at least I did, in kind of knowing it was better to be a boy and easier. And, if you're a boy, you would be elected president of the class. If you were a girl, you would be elected treasurer or secretary of the class, as I was many times. And I remember in school, the boys, the smart boys, would always get all this praise, but there was always more smart girls, and they would just get ignored. It was kind of funny, but it was, we just accepted it. That's just the way it was, because he's a boy, And I remember the first time in 1982 when I read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and they entertained the idea of the marriage of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and a little bit about her history. And I remember feeling so vindicated somehow. Not that I had been a big Mary Magdalene follower up to that time, but I realized it felt personal. And it was like, by raising her up, to her rightful position, it uplifts all of us. And in particular, all women. And do you think that is the reason why people are so enamored with her?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if she was worthy enough to have been his bride, his confidant, his co-equal, he ascends, after the crucifixion, and she stays and continues the mission and passes down the training, the traditions, and it wasn't eradicated. It couldn't be. And I can't wait to share what I have found in the last year plus on this front.
I know. I can't either.
She was the new Eve. And in the three Abrahamic religions, everything is Eve's fault. And there are terrible things, said about women by, not all, but you have two classes of men in these religions, and in one does not like women at all. The other one wants to have a relationship with women and have doesn't feel intimidated, isn't abusive, wants to grow and have a great family, a good life, or whatever. So in history, when you look at monarchs and the different relationships they have with their wives, you see it play out, and you see it in the letters. Saint Augustine. And if you're in the UK, and where Southeast England, not far from Canterbury Cathedral, where his first church was, I think it's 597, he shows up with, and it's not talked about much, but he brings a Merovingian princess with him, and she marries the King of Kent. But the emphasis is put on him trying to bring quasi-heretical England closer to Rome. And that's when priests were no longer allowed to marry at that juncture when he shows up. But he also said that women are not worthy of life. Women are of Eve, and it's always Eve that shows up in a woman. You can't trust women.
Right.
And that's a terrible thing to say.
Women are temptresses.
Yeah. So you're either,
Either a harlot or a virgin.
yeah, and I'm sorry, but that's not how life comes into the world. So it's about love and mutual respect in partnerships and marriages. But you get some, so you get this hallmark of English history and church history. What a great guy St. Augustine was, and it affects everybody, down the centuries. But there are many moments in history where the Roman Church grabbed hold of the monarch and wrested power from the monarch.
Yeah.
And there are many moments I've recently written about that. But and I'm not saying that by any stretch that I'm not endorsing monarchy as a form of government. Basically, if you've got a priestly caste going back into ancient Sumer, into ancient Greece, and Moses takes ancient Egyptian priesthood into and infuse it into Judaism. I mean, the Egyptian Book of the Dead is, the Ten Commandments is line by line by line, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And you can look that up. It's pretty darn easy. But no religion springs out of the ground originally formed with zero prior contact with any other culture. It doesn't exist. So when Jesus comes in, he's basically an exiled king, and he's of a Jewish background with ancient Egyptian priestly spiritual gifts, profound spiritual gifts, and he shares that and initiates Mary Magdalene, and that goes right into Europe. Now, Europe had its own prior impetuses as well. That's another thing. Forgive me. So no culture is devoid of a prior spiritual culture. I hope that makes sense. Have I lost the plot? Forgive me.
It does. It really does. It looks kind of complicated, but it's really interesting.
And you've got you've got the Madonna figure. The original Madonna figure is Isis, who's married to Osiris, and they have Horus, and there she is seated with her her child. And that is the earliest form of a Madonna figure, which gets borrowed and perpetuated. And Mother Mary is important, but Mother Mary is often masking Mary Magdalene too.
Yeah, that's what I think as well.
Yeah, picking the two of them apart isn't always easy. And then, of course, you have the Black Madonna, which could be a reference to Sarah, and the daughter, and Sarah meaning literally in Hebrew princess.
Right. Or it could be a reference to Mary Magdalene. And
yes,
being in reference not necessarily to complexion, but to the occult nature.
Well, it's a Cinderella. It's a Cinderella motif, isn't it? Because she has to hide.
Yeah.
Because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So forgive me. I'm excited, and I think
I love it.
This is really a great conversation.
I know.
So
I'm so sorry about the technical problems, but for one thing, the good news is that many, many more people will hear this show than see it, because it goes out, in audio and video first, but then it's shared on all the podcast platforms. And that's where most of the audience comes from. So they won't even know about our camera glitches. They might hear me faffing around trying to do something about it. But at least it won't ruin their picture.
Yes, indeed. Well, it got through it, and it wasn't that that.
Yeah, and I even switched cameras in the middle because it seemed to be, I was just unplugging everything that I didn't absolutely have to have, because my picture went black and I couldn't see anything. And that includes even operating the board here. So anyway, hopefully I'll get that straightened out before next week. But it also could be due to, we are in some crazy weather here in Southern California. It has been raining and raining. You know, we were begging for rain a couple weeks ago when we had the big fires, and we still need it. But, you know, unfortunately, after the fires, you get the mudslides, you know, when you get a lot of rain. So I hope we get enough, but not too much.
Yeah.
And, you know, feeling for all the people that are displaced in Los Angeles right now, and especially those that are not super wealthy and staying at the Beverly Wilshire.
Yeah.
You know, because not everybody that lost their home was a movie star.
Yeah.
That was out in the Palisades. But anyway, yeah, there were people that have lived out there for a long time, or their house was a family home. And so when their parents bought it, it was like $80,000, and now it's worth like $5 million, you know.
Yeah.
And they'll never be able to rebuild or come back. And those are the people that are heartbreaking to me. But thank goodness the fires are over. Although I did hear earlier this evening, someone sent me a little news report that they had arrested some guys today out trying to set fires in the rain. I'm not sure how much luck they were having, but what are they doing? Why would you want to do something like that?
Wow.
It's
Oh,
crazy.
that's horrible, you know. And it's just the lack of empathy. You know, what's wrong with that person?
Yeah.
Uh, it's
Totally
just
unconscious, you know, just
devastating.
talk about
Devastating.
no self-awareness, you know, we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
And, you know thyself, that is so, so good. And I remember when that just sort of hit home for me, you know, it was, I mean, I heard it all my life. But what it really meant, you know, I didn't figure that out for quite a while, I don't think. And it meant, you know, everything is inward. And as Jesus supposedly said, you know, the kingdom of heaven is within. So all you have to do is know your true self and be that. And you're fine. You're just fine. And because if you are that, if it's your true self, you are going to be a positive force in the world. You're going to do the right thing. You're going to be kind. You're going to be supportive. And, you know, all this other stuff just falls by the wayside when you really know what's up.
And that's a perfect lead into, you know, in the it's complicated. It's like one coin in the realm of quantum mechanics. I had this experience, and it's turned out to be rooted in reality, although I didn't really understand at the time what it all meant. But so I'm part of this stream, and the traditions, the history, the mysteries.
Mm.
Her story is very important to me. But how do I show up in service rather than in self-aggrandizement, which I see a lot in this field?
It's different. It's difficult.
Yeah, and
Ego is our biggest enemy, I think.
yeah, and it's
All subject to it. You know, it's like it's
yeah,
easy to fall prey to the ego. And
yeah,
I've, you know, there have been times when I've just embarrassed myself because I was getting all like thinking I was all this and all that. And suddenly I thought, what in the world? You know, I'd been invited to speak at this place, and I think there were like maybe, you know, a couple thousand people there. And I had been told that if we came there to speak, we are guaranteed that we would have a standing ovation. Well, if you're guaranteed a standing ovation, then how real is that standing ovation really going to be if people have just been told to do it?
Yeah.
How could
Yes.
they guarantee it? Anyway, so I knew that going up, went up there, did the presentation and everything. And then everyone was just going wild and giving us a standing ovation. And I caught myself standing on stage doing this.
You were excited. You were really excited and into it.
I was a star. And so but in the middle of it, right there, in mid, throwing kisses, I said, "What are you doing? You know this was staged. You know that whether or not they thought you were the most horrible speaker in the world, they were going to give you a standing ovation. Yet you fell for it anyway. It felt so good." And it was funny because a few months later, I knew someone else that went to speak, and I said, "Oh, how was it?" And he goes, "Oh, it's good." And I said, "Did you get your standing ovation?" And he said, "Yep." I said, "Felt good, didn't it?" And he started laughing and he said, "Yeah, it did." And I said, "Man, I caught myself really like eating that up. It was a shame." Anyway, oh my gosh, we're down to a
It's
minute.
challenging. It's challenging. I think that it's really important to not down ourselves either, because we've all been taught to feel guilty, feel shame, that it's your fault, but that is really counterproductive to the immune system. If you're happy or are satisfied and contented with your life, your immune system is going to be more stronger. I don't think that we're supposed to be feeling horrible about who we are,
No, no.
and I don't think we're supposed to, because we're created through the divine mind. I think, maybe through the long lens of time, but from those higher levels of, we have solidified into these forms. And the Garden of Eden, the fall, all of these are metaphors from a very long time ago, written under a thinking pattern that might not be very human or kind. But our immune systems are meant to respond to love, kindness, positivity. And we have to be responsible. We need to, we love adventure, we like hard work as human beings. And we have to contribute to, we have to contribute to our world, or basically we die. If you're a hunting party, wandering around and hunting and gathering, you've got to participate, or you go out. So it's this balance of the real physical action with positivity and a solid
Intention.
yeah, and don't let people tell you you're not worth it and you're unworthy somehow. But aspiration, inspiration, all day long, and we're creatures driven by huge hormonal powers to keep the human race going. If we didn't have that drive, we would be over a long time ago. So we're battling the human system, along with aspirations of becoming greater within and in our lives and to our communities. So.
And on that note, we are out of time. We've gone a little bit over, but I don't think
my apologies.
Our executive producer, Bill, will mind too much. If he does, he can take it up with me. No, he's very good. And I just hope he's able to deal with this show with all the glitches in it tonight. But he should be, at least on the audio portion of it. But anyhow, Gretchen, thank you so much. And I hope to see you soon on the other side of the pond. And it'll be fun doing some good work together.
I look forward to it.
And those of you who are looking at the screen, you see up there Gretchen Cornwall, World Tree Music. Look her up on YouTube. You won't believe it. She's got a hauntingly beautiful voice, and there's some very wonderful medieval sounding tunes and things. It's really gorgeous. And also check out GretchenCornwall.com and go to her shop at GretchenCornwall.com/shop. There's some cool things up there. I'm getting some. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. And Gretchen, thank you. And I hope to speak
Thank
with
you.
you super, super soon. Whoops. Anyway, oh, there was one more thing I was gonna say. Next week, I should have James Martin on, and we will be delving into Templar stuff. And I am going to nail him on some things that he found, because a lot of people try to say that the Templars didn't have any connection with Mary Magdalene at all, but he has found some solid evidence in documents, in you know academic archives, that show that they did venerate Mary Magdalene. And so I'll get him to talk a little bit about that along with the rest of the Templar history. Thanks, everybody.